Alright, well, my kids came down and sort of screamed a bunch, so I had to cut camera. So let's start this again. Glock 34 unmodified. I have two trigger bars here. This one's actually polished from an old 34. This one is a new one. Since this is basically new, I'm not even going to bother with that one. I have a little competition 6-pound trigger return spring. I believe that one I will put in along with the extra power firing spring. I had a Glock minus connector here. Realized I already have that in here, so I'm not going to bother with that. I have a Lone Wolf distributing minus connector and a Ghost Pro minus connector that already had been filed down one time in the past for a previous Glock 34 that now has a Timney trigger in it. That one's phenomenal, by the way. Definitely happy with that. Otherwise, stock Glock 34 Gen 3. Again, it's been empty. We'll do some basic trigger pulls here. It's about 5. Notice that sometimes with the different angles you can get on here, it can be a little all over the place. It's about 4.5. 4.5. If you pull downward, stock trigger. And then a little bit playing around with this ahead of time. The Lone Wolf I'm going to put in first. I actually had to bend it a little bit to modify it since it used to have a pretty aggressive angle on it, which wouldn't allow it to reset. And then just recently, when it was resetting, it wasn't pulling this all the way forward with the safety tab popping out. So if I were not paying attention, I could potentially have it sitting there like this, which, you know, accidental pull on there, round off in the pants, or if I'm competition through the side of my leg or the floor. You know, floor is not as bad, but still scary nonetheless. Technically speaking, yeah, I don't need that. So I was just kind of curious to see what my trigger pulls would be like with these different connectors, stock trigger. And then once I'm done figuring out which one I like the most, trigger pull wise, I'm going to save that one. Probably throw the polished trigger in there with the trigger bar that's polished. I'm going to start off with the Lone Wolf because I feel like this one's going to be not as good as the Ghost from previous experience, but I'm not 100%. So let's have at it. Depending on how good this is, you might be able to hear my kid crying upstairs, which is always a blast. All right. I usually do a good job of putting these in here, but not today, apparently. Lone wolf guy. Four and 3/4. Over 4.5. 4.5. So roughly 4.5 each time. So let's try it again with the ghost. I think with this ghost one having this little tab on there, I'll be fine, because I think it roughly should be the same as my other Glock, so it should be fine. And I realized my last pulls did not show on the camera, so we'll see if that can be corrected this time around. You might be able to tell that I've done this a handful of times. Maybe. Okay. Let's try this again, a little bit closer to the camera. Ooh, over 5. Showing about 5.5. That one shows 4 and 3/4. I'm gonna try it one more time, because I think it's just the angle at which I was getting them. 4.5. So it's all over the place. Let me see if I can replicate that one more time. Now it's showing a little over 4. So tough call. That one feels a little better to my hands. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw a extra power spring in here. That way I will be able to pop off some rifle primers in my competition rounds. So let's see. I've noticed I've had pretty good consistency with fresh of these springs with the rifle primers. Once they start to wear in a little bit, they get a little sketchy, but wear in is a couple 5,000 rounds in there, somewhere in that realm. So and I think that might also be just me not being 100% consistent with my reloads, so I gotta keep that in mind as well. Make sure everything is not everything's flush. finish that. So I'm gonna leave the ghost one in there. Since for my money it's negligible. Let's see. Get this bad boy out of here. This must be a 6-pound trigger. Let's throw the polished guy on here, since I have a feeling it'll be just a little bit nicer. Fucking lost it. Luckily, my floor is bright, so I can actually see these things. All right, let's put this bad boy back together. I just had that one right here. Let's do that. Feels a little crispier. Not phenomenal by any stretch, but definitely a little crispier. Let's see, get back to doing it the way I was. I get a better look at it. 4.5. Under 5. That shows 4. So I'm gonna say roughly 4.5 as an average. Yeah, a little shy of 4.5. So, oh, starts off good-ish. Ends up pretty much the same, but trigger's a little bit smoother, heavier firing pin spring, a little more reliable ignition of my rifle primers, and yeah, should be good. So, stock-ish Glock 34.